Life inside a medieval castle was not what most people imagine. As the story continues, the pace stays slow and calm. There is no hurry, only the quiet passing of time. You can listen closely, or let the sound fade as the night moves gently forward. If you are listening at night, tell me where you are and what time it is. Welcome to Dreamy Old Stories, where we share slow and gentle stories from history. These stories are made to calm your mind and help you fall asleep. Night deepens slowly around the castle. The last colors of evening have faded from the sky, leaving a wide darkness filled with quiet stars. Above the stone towers, the night air feels cool and calm, drifting gently across the high walls and narrow windows. Inside the castle courtyard, the movement of the day has almost completely faded. Torches burn steadily along the walls, their flames bending slightly whenever the breeze passes through the open space. The light they give is soft and uneven. It touches the stone ground in warm circles that fade quickly into shadow. Most of the people who filled the courtyard earlier have now returned to their rooms. Doors close quietly along the inner walls of the castle. Wooden beams creak softly as they settle for the night. The sounds are small but familiar to those who live here. Night inside a castle rarely becomes completely silent. There are always a few people still awake. Near the great hall, a servant carries the final stack of cleaned wooden bowls back into the kitchen. The room that was busy earlier during the evening meal now feels much calmer. The fire in the hearth burns low, its glowing coals giving off a soft, steady heat. The servant places the bowls carefully onto a wooden shelf beside the wall. Nearby, another servant wipes the last cooking pot before hanging it on an iron hook above the hearth. The metal clinks gently as it settles into place. These final tasks of the evening happen slowly. No one rushes them. After a long day of work, even the simplest movements feel quiet and thoughtful. When the work is finished, the servants step outside into the cool courtyard air. One of them pauses for a moment to stretch tired arms before walking toward the sleeping chambers above the hall. The kitchen door closes softly behind them. Across the courtyard, the stable remains dimly lit by a single lantern hanging near the entrance. Inside, the horses rest in their stalls. Their breathing fills the stable with a calm rhythm that rises and falls in the quiet darkness. Occasionally, one horse shifts its weight or brushes against the wooden rail of its stall. The sound is soft and gentle. A stable boy sleeps on a simple straw mattress in a corner of the stable. A thick blanket covers him against the cool night air. His work during the day has left him tired, and he sleeps deeply. Still, he remains close to the horses in case one becomes restless during the night. Animals inside the castle bring a quiet comfort to the dark hours. Their steady breathing and small movements remind those nearby that life continues even while most of the castle sleeps. Near the gate, the guards continue their watch. Two men stand beside the heavy wooden doors that remain closed through the night. Iron bands hold the thick boards together, and a large wooden bar rests across the inside to keep the gate secure. One guard walks slowly along the inside wall beside the gate while the other remains near the doorway. They speak only occasionally, exchanging a few quiet words before returning to silence. Most of the time they simply listen. The night beyond the castle walls carries its own sounds. Wind moving through distant trees. The faint call of an owl somewhere across the fields. Sometimes the far-away bark of a dog from a nearby village. These sounds reach the guards faintly through the heavy gate and stone walls. Above them, the stars continue to shine across the open sky. Along the high wall walk, another guard moves carefully along the narrow stone path. A lantern hangs from his hand, its small light guiding each step. The lantern sways slightly as he walks. Shadows stretch and move along the wall beside him. From this high position, the castle courtyard below appears quiet and still. The torch flames flicker gently against the walls. The roofs of the buildings form dark shapes beneath the sky. Beyond the outer walls, the countryside lies almost completely silent. The guard pauses near one of the towers and rests his lantern on a small stone ledge. From here, the land spreads wide beneath the night sky. Fields that were bright with sunlight earlier now appear as dark shapes across the distance. The narrow roads between villages are empty. The world feels calm. After a few moments, the guard lifts the lantern again and continues his slow patrol along the wall. Inside the castle keep, the upper corridors remain quiet. Most doors are closed now. Behind them, people sleep in simple beds beneath thick blankets. Some rooms hold 2 or 3 sleepers resting side by side. Others belong to knights or visitors who have been given a small space for the night. The stone walls keep the rooms cool, but heavy cloth and wool blankets provide warmth. Occasionally, someone turns in their sleep, causing the bed frame to creak softly in the darkness. In one chamber near the top of the keep, a candle burns beside a small wooden table. A man sits there quietly writing a short message on a piece of parchment. The room is still except for the scratching sound of the quill against the surface of the page. Not everyone sleeps at the same time inside the castle. Some tasks require late attention. The man finishes his writing and gently blows out the candle. The room falls into darkness except for the faint light of the stars shining through the narrow window. Outside once more, the courtyard remains peaceful. The torches continue their soft flicker. The stone walls hold the quiet air of night. And slowly, as the hours move forward, the castle settles deeper into sleep beneath the calm watch of the stars. The night continues its slow and steady passage over the castle. Hours move quietly beneath the stars. Most of the people inside the walls are now asleep, resting after the long work of the day. The rooms within the keep and along the inner walls remain dark and still. But the castle itself does not sleep completely. Small movements continue through the quiet hours. Along the high wall walk, the guard with the lantern keeps moving along the stone path. His steps are careful, steady, and familiar. The narrow walkway curves gently between towers, guiding him through the same route he has walked many nights before. The lantern in his hand sways slightly with each step. Its small circle of light touches the stone beneath his feet and the rough wall beside him. Beyond that light, the rest of the wall fades into darkness. Occasionally, the guard pauses beside one of the towers. From these points, he can see farther across the countryside. The night air moves gently across the fields below. Distant trees form quiet outlines against the faint glow of the sky. The land feels wide and still. He listens for a moment before continuing his patrol. Below the wall walk, the courtyard remains peaceful. The torches placed along the walls burn lower now. Their flames have grown smaller as the hours pass. The light they cast moves slowly along the stone surfaces, creating long shadows that stretch toward the center of the courtyard. Near the stable, the lantern beside the door glows softly. Inside, the horses rest in calm silence. Their bodies shift slowly from time to time, causing the straw beneath them to rustle quietly. One horse exhales deeply before settling again into stillness. The stable boy who sleeps nearby turns slightly beneath his blanket but does not wake. The rhythm of the animals has become familiar to him over many nights. Not far from the stable, The well stands quietly in the center of the courtyard. During the day, this place is busy with movement as people draw water again and again. But at night, the rope hangs still against the wooden frame. The bucket rests deep in the darkness below. Only the wind moves here now, brushing lightly against the wooden beams. Inside the kitchen building, the hearth still holds a faint glow. The fire that cooked the evening meal has settled into a bed of warm coals. Their red light flickers gently within the stone hearth, giving the room a quiet warmth. The cooking pots hang motionless above the fire. Wooden tables stand empty where earlier in the day vegetables were chopped and bread was prepared. The smell of herbs and smoke lingers softly in the air. Night has brought rest to this busy place. Across the courtyard, the great hall lies dark except for a few remaining candles near the walls. Most of the candles have already been extinguished, leaving only a dim glow inside the large room. The long wooden tables sit empty now. Benches remain where they were placed earlier in the evening. The hall feels larger in the darkness. Its high ceiling and tall windows disappear into shadow, while the stone floor reflects the faint light of the last candles. Near the entrance, the dog that rested here earlier still sleeps quietly beside the wall. The animal stirs briefly before settling again, its breathing slow and steady. Outside the hall, near the heavy wooden gate, the two guards continue their night watch. One stands close to the gate itself, resting a hand lightly against the thick wood. The other walks slowly back and forth along the short path between the gate and the wall. Their footsteps echo softly in the quiet courtyard. They do not speak often. Most of their attention remains on listening. The sounds of the night carry faintly beyond the walls, wind through the grass, the distant movement of animals in the fields, sometimes the faint creak of tree branches far away. These sounds pass through the darkness without disturbing the calm. Inside the keep, the sleeping rooms remain peaceful. Behind closed wooden doors, people sleep beneath blankets and thick cloth coverings. The rooms hold the cool air of the stone walls, but the closeness of the space and the warmth of the bedding make the night comfortable. A servant turns slightly in sleep. In another room, a knight breathes slowly beside the small table where his gloves and belt rest for the next day. Elsewhere, a traveler who arrived earlier sleeps deeply after the long road. The castle holds many lives within its walls, and for these quiet hours they rest together beneath the same roof. High above them, the towers remain silent. Stone blocks that were placed together many years ago now stand unmoving in the night air. Wind brushes lightly against their surfaces, but the towers remain steady and strong. From the highest windows, faint starlight enters the empty upper rooms. Dust drifts slowly in the air where no one walks during the night. Back along the wall walk, the guard reaches the far tower and pauses once again. He places the lantern beside him and looks out across the dark countryside. The stars stretch across the sky in wide patterns. The land below remains still, resting beneath the quiet sky just as the castle rests within its walls. After a few moments, the guard lifts the lantern again. He turns and continues his slow path along the stone wall. Below him, the courtyard remains calm. The torches burn lower. The horses sleep. The rooms inside the castle stay dark and peaceful, and the night continues its gentle watch over the life inside the medieval castle. The night moves quietly through its deepest hours. Inside the castle walls, almost every room has grown still. The corridors remain dark except for the faint light that slips through narrow windows where the stars shine outside. Most of the people who live here are now fully asleep. Breathing rises and falls slowly in the sleeping chambers. Blankets shift slightly as someone turns during a dream before settling again into stillness. The stone walls hold the cool air of the night. Outside in the courtyard, the torches burn lower than before. Their flames are smaller now, and their light reaches only a short distance across the ground. The courtyard feels wide and calm beneath the dark sky. Near the gate, the guards remain quietly at their posts. One leans lightly against the wall while the other walks the familiar short path beside the heavy wooden doors. Their watch continues as the hours of darkness pass slowly. Across the courtyard, the stable lantern glows softly beside the door. Inside, the horses breathe gently in the quiet straw-filled stalls. The stable boy sleeps nearby, wrapped in his blanket while the peaceful rhythm of the animals surrounds him. High above the courtyard, the guard on the wall walk continues his slow patrol beneath the quiet stars. The night slowly begins to move toward morning. It happens so gently that no one inside the castle notices the change at first. The stars still shine above the towers, and the courtyard remains quiet beneath the soft glow of the last torches. But somewhere far beyond the castle walls, the first faint hint of dawn begins to touch the horizon. Inside the sleeping chambers, most people remain wrapped in deep rest. Blankets rise and fall with slow breathing. Wooden beds creak softly now and then as someone shifts during sleep. The stone walls hold the cool air of the night, keeping the rooms calm and still. In the stable, the horses begin to stir slightly. One lifts its head and shakes its mane gently. Another shifts its weight in the straw, causing a soft rustling sound that spreads through the quiet space. The stable boy nearby stirs beneath his blanket but does not wake fully. Animals often sense the coming morning before people do. Their bodies respond to the slow change in light that approaches the world outside the castle. Near the gate, the guards continue their watch just as they have through the long night. One guard pauses and looks upward toward the sky. The stars remain bright, but along the far edge of the horizon, there is a faint softness where darkness will soon begin to fade. He notices it quietly and continues his slow walk beside the heavy wooden doors. Above the courtyard, along the wall walk, the guard carrying the lantern reaches the end of his path once again. He stops beside one of the towers and places the lantern carefully on a stone ledge. The flame inside the lantern burns low now after many hours of use. From this high place, he can see the distant land stretching far beyond the castle walls. The fields remain dark, but a thin pale glow now touches the far edge of the sky. Morning is still some time away, yet the night has begun to loosen its hold. Inside the kitchen building, the last coals in the hearth continue to glow faintly. The room is quiet and empty for the moment. Pots hang above the hearth just as they were left after the evening meal. Wooden tables rest beneath the soft shadows of the dark ceiling beams. Soon someone will return to this room to begin the new day's work. But for now, the kitchen remains peaceful. Across the courtyard, the great hall also rests in silence. The candles that burned during the evening have long since been extinguished. Only the faint outline of the tall windows can be seen against the dark interior. The long tables and benches wait quietly for the next gathering that will arrive later in the day. The hall feels calm and patient, just like the rest of the castle. In the upper chambers of the keep, a few early stirrings begin. A servant opens her eyes slowly as the faint gray light of approaching dawn slips through the narrow window of her room. She remains still for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of the castle around her. The distant shift of a horse in the stable, the soft creak of wood somewhere in the corridor, the faint footsteps of a guard outside on the wall. These sounds are familiar. They belong to the quiet hours just before morning. After a few moments, she sits up and wraps a cloak around her shoulders. The stone floor feels cool beneath her feet as she walks toward the door. In the corridor outside, the air feels fresh and calm. A thin line of pale light reaches through one of the small windows along the wall. It touches the stone floor in a narrow shape that grows slightly brighter with each passing minute. The servant walks slowly down the corridor toward the narrow staircase that leads to the courtyard below. Each step echoes softly as she descends. When she reaches the bottom of the stairs, she pauses for a moment near the doorway that opens into the courtyard. The sky above the castle walls has begun to change. Dark blue slowly fades into lighter shades near the horizon. The stars nearest that edge begin to disappear one by one. The torches along the courtyard walls burn low now, their flames small and quiet. The air carries the cool freshness that arrives before sunrise. Soon the first work of the new day will begin. But for this brief moment, the castle remains suspended between night and morning. The guards continue their watch. The horses breathe quietly in the stable. The corridors remain still. And slowly, patiently, the medieval castle prepares to wake once more. The quiet moment before sunrise slowly fades as the castle begins to wake again. The sky above the walls grows lighter with each passing minute. The stars that filled the night sky gradually disappear, leaving behind a soft gray light that spreads gently across the land. Inside the courtyard, the torches burn very low now. Their flames flicker weakly before fading one by one. Soon the light of the rising morning will replace them completely. Near the stable, the horses have begun to move more noticeably. One horse shakes its head and stamps a hoof softly against the straw. Another stretches its neck over the wooden rail of the stall. The sounds are small, but they break the deep quiet that filled the night. The stable boy slowly wakes. He sits up on his straw mattress and rubs his eyes, listening to the familiar sounds around him. The smell of hay and warm animals fills the stable just as it did the night before. For a moment he simply sits there, letting the last of sleep fade away. Then he stands and walks toward the stable door. Outside, the courtyard feels fresh and cool in the early morning air. The sky above the castle walls now holds a pale light that grows brighter with every moment. The boy stretches his arms and begins his morning work. He checks the water buckets beside each stall and begins filling them again from the well. The rope moves slowly through the wooden wheel as the bucket lowers into the darkness below. The familiar creak of the rope returns to the courtyard. Nearby, the guards at the gate finish the final hour of their long night watch. One guard leans back slightly and looks toward the brightening horizon beyond the castle walls. Soon another pair of guards will take their place as the day begins. Night watch is quiet work, but it demands patience. After many hours standing beside the gate, the guard rolls his shoulders gently before resuming his slow walk along the wall. Above them, the guard on the high wall walk completes his patrol as the sky grows brighter. The lantern he carried through the night is no longer needed. The pale light of morning now spreads across the stone walkway, revealing the rough surface of the wall and the distant countryside beyond. Fields that were hidden in darkness only an hour ago slowly return to view. Soft shapes of farmland, trees, and narrow roads appear again beneath the growing light. The guard pauses beside one of the towers and watches the horizon for a moment. A thin line of golden color now touches the edge of the sky. The sun will rise soon. Inside the castle buildings, more people begin to wake. In one of the upper chambers of the keep, a servant opens the shutters of a narrow window. Cool morning air moves gently into the room, carrying the faint smell of grass and distant fields. Light spills across the stone floor as the shutters swing open. The servant begins the quiet work of the morning, folding blankets and preparing the room for the day ahead. Across the corridor, another door opens slowly. A knight steps into the hallway, his hair still slightly disordered from sleep. He pauses beside the window and looks out toward the courtyard below. From this height, he can see the stable boy drawing water from the well. The knight remains there for a moment, enjoying the calm of the early hour before the work of the day begins. Down in the kitchen building, the first servant arrives to begin preparing the morning fire. The room still holds the faint warmth of the coals that burned through the night. The servant kneels beside the hearth and gently stirs the ashes, uncovering the small glowing pieces that remain beneath. Dry wood is placed carefully on top. Soon a thin line of smoke rises from the hearth as the fire begins to grow again. The kitchen slowly comes back to life. Wood crackles softly. A pot is placed above the fire. Water begins to warm for the morning meal. Outside, the courtyard grows brighter with each passing minute. The towers cast long shadows across the stone ground as the sun begins to approach the horizon. Birds appear along the tops of the castle walls, their quiet calls drifting through the fresh morning air. Near the garden along the inner wall, dew rests on the leaves of the small plants. The tiny drops catch the first hints of sunlight, shining softly before slowly disappearing as the day warms. The woman who tends the garden will arrive later, but the plants greet the morning quietly on their own. Across the courtyard, doors begin to open along the inner walls of the castle. Servants step outside carrying empty buckets or baskets for the day's work. Their footsteps echo gently against the stone as they move toward the well or the kitchen. The castle is waking again. The calm of night slowly fades into the quiet activity of morning. And as the sky brightens above the tall stone towers, another ordinary day inside the medieval castle begins to unfold. The sun slowly begins to rise beyond the distant fields. A soft golden light spreads across the horizon and reaches the castle walls. The tops of the towers glow first, catching the morning light before it slowly moves downward toward the courtyard below. Inside the castle, the quiet activity of early morning continues. The stable boy carries another bucket of water across the courtyard and pours it carefully into the wooden trough inside the stable. The horses lower their heads and drink slowly, their breathing calm in the cool morning air. Near the gate, the guards who watched through the night are finally relieved. 2 fresh guards arrive and take their places beside the heavy wooden doors. The night watch steps away from the gate and stretches tired arms before walking slowly toward the great hall where a simple morning meal will soon be served. Above the courtyard, the guard on the wall walk pauses beside a tower and looks across the brightening land. The fields and distant farms now appear clearly in the growing light. Thin lines of smoke begin rising from village homes far beyond the castle walls. Morning has fully arrived. Inside the kitchen, the fire burns steadily again as the cooks prepare the first food of the day. The quiet smells of warm grain and fresh bread slowly drift outward into the courtyard. The castle breathes once more with the calm beginning of another day. Morning settles comfortably over the castle once again. The sun has now risen above the distant fields, and its light reaches fully into the courtyard. The cool air of dawn begins to warm as the day slowly unfolds. The stone walls that held the chill of the night now absorb the growing sunlight. Inside the castle, the familiar rhythm of the morning continues. Servants cross the courtyard carrying buckets from the well. The rope creaks softly as it lowers and lifts again and again. Water spills gently over the edges of the bucket before settling inside wooden containers beside the kitchen door. Each movement follows patterns that have repeated for many years. Inside the kitchen, the fire burns steadily in the hearth. The cooks move quietly between the wooden tables, preparing the morning meal just as they did the day before. A pot of porridge warms slowly above the fire while fresh bread is sliced into thick pieces. The smell of warm grain and baked bread fills the room. Servants enter to collect bowls and trays that will soon be carried into the great hall. Their footsteps move calmly across the stone floor before disappearing back into the courtyard. Outside, the courtyard becomes more active as the castle fully wakes. Stable doors open wider to allow fresh air inside. The horses stand alert now, their coats shining softly beneath the morning light. A stable boy brushes one horse carefully, moving the brush along its back in long, steady strokes. The horse lowers its head slightly, enjoying the calm attention. Nearby, another boy checks the straps of a saddle hanging from a wooden rack. Leather is wiped clean with a cloth to keep it smooth and strong for the day's riding. The quiet care of animals is an important part of castle life. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith steps into his workshop once again. The forge fire that cooled overnight is carefully rebuilt. Dry wood and pieces of coal are placed inside the stone hearth. Soon a small flame begins to grow stronger as the blacksmith works the bellows. Air rushes gently into the fire. The glow becomes brighter. Before long, the first piece of iron rests above the heat, preparing for another day of shaping and repair. The steady sound of the hammer will return soon. Near the garden along the inner wall, the morning light touches rows of herbs and vegetables. Small leaves hold the last drops of dew that formed during the night. The woman who tends the garden arrives carrying a small wooden bucket. She kneels beside the plants and pours water slowly along the soil. The earth darkens slightly where the water touches it. Bees move quietly among the tiny flowers growing between the rows. Gardens bring a quiet softness to the castle walls. While much of the castle is built from heavy stone and iron, the garden reminds everyone that living things grow patiently even inside strong walls. Above the courtyard, the wall walk holds the steady movement of the guards beginning their day patrol. The new guards who replaced the night watch now move along the stone path between towers. The morning air is fresh at this height, and the wide countryside spreads clearly beneath the rising sun. Fields stretch outward in neat patterns. Farmers in distant lands have already begun their work for the day, their movements small but visible from the castle walls. The guard pauses beside one of the towers and rests his hands on the stone edge. From here, he can see the narrow road leading toward the nearby villages. A small cart moves slowly along the road, pulled by a horse that appears no larger than a toy from this distance. The guard watches quietly before continuing his walk. Inside the great hall, the morning meal begins to gather. Long tables fill slowly with people arriving from different parts of the castle. Servants place bowls of porridge and baskets of bread along the tables while wooden cups are filled with water. The hall feels bright compared to the quiet darkness it held during the night. Sunlight enters through the tall windows and spreads across the stone floor. People sit and begin to eat. Conversations remain gentle and relaxed. The work of the day will soon continue, but for this short time the hall offers a calm place to begin the morning. At the high table, the lord of the castle joins the meal with members of the household. They speak quietly while servants bring small dishes prepared by the kitchen. Nearby, knights and travelers sit along the lower tables finishing their bread and porridge. Morning meals are usually simple, but they offer the strength needed for the hours of work ahead. Outside once more, the courtyard fills with the steady movement of daily life. The blacksmith's hammer begins its slow rhythm. Clang, pause, clang. The sound echoes softly across the walls just as it has on many mornings before. The castle has fully awakened now. Footsteps cross the stone ground. Doors open and close along the inner walls. Voices drift through the air in quiet conversation. Another ordinary morning inside the medieval castle continues to unfold beneath the bright and patient sky. The morning continues to unfold across the castle. By now, the early meal in the great hall has mostly finished. Bowls that once held warm porridge sit nearly empty, and the baskets that carried bread have grown lighter. People stand slowly from the long benches, stretching their arms before returning to the work of the day. Servants move between the tables collecting the dishes. Wooden spoons are placed into baskets. Bowls are stacked carefully one inside another. The quiet clink of clay and wood fills the hall as the room slowly empties again. Sunlight pours through the tall windows, filling the great hall with a gentle brightness. Dust drifts lazily in the light. The hall will grow lively again later in the day, but for now it settles back into calm as the morning work begins outside. In the courtyard, the steady rhythm of activity has returned. Servants cross the open space carrying tools, buckets, or small bundles of cloth. Their footsteps echo softly against the stone walls as they move from one building to another. Near the well, a pair of servants continue drawing water. The rope slides across the wooden wheel again and again. Each time the bucket returns from the darkness below, water glistens briefly in the sunlight before being carried away to kitchens, stables, or washing basins. Water is needed everywhere inside the castle. Its quiet movement from the well to each building continues throughout the day. Nearby, the blacksmith's hammer keeps its steady rhythm. Clang. The sound rises clearly into the morning air. The glowing iron on the anvil slowly changes shape beneath each careful strike. Sparks jump briefly before fading into the light. The blacksmith works patiently, pausing from time to turn the metal and return it to the heat of the forge. Inside the stable, the horses have finished their first feeding of the day. Some stand calmly while others shift in their stalls as the stable boys finish brushing their coats. The sound of the brush moving across the horses' backs blends softly with the rustle of straw beneath their hooves. One horse leans its head toward the open doorway, looking out into the courtyard. The sunlight touches its mane, giving the hair a faint shine. Nearby, a saddle rests on a wooden rack while a stable boy checks the leather straps carefully. Each strap must remain strong and secure before the horse is ridden later in the day. The care of equipment happens quietly but steadily. Across the courtyard, the garden along the inner wall continues to glow beneath the morning sun. The woman tending the plants moves slowly along the rows. She checks the leaves of each herb and gently presses the soil around their roots. A bee drifts lazily from flower to flower. The small garden seems peaceful even while the rest of the courtyard grows busier. Not far from the garden, two young children sit near the base of the wall watching the activity around them. One traces shapes in the dust with a small stick while the other watches a group of soldiers passing through the courtyard. Their quiet play blends naturally into the larger life of the castle. Children grow up surrounded by these daily scenes. They learn the rhythm of castle life simply by observing the world around them. Above them, the guards continue their slow patrol along the wall walk. From their high path, the entire courtyard lies open below. The movement of people appears calm and orderly from this height. Beyond the walls, the countryside stretches far into the distance. Farmers can be seen working in the fields under the growing sunlight. Thin trails of smoke rise from distant cottages where morning fires warm simple homes. The guard pauses beside one of the towers and watches the road that leads toward the castle gate. A small group of travelers appears far away along the path. They move slowly with a cart pulled by a horse. From this distance, it is impossible to know where they are coming from or where they will go next. The guard simply observes. Below, near the gate itself, another guard stands beside the heavy wooden doors. He rests one hand against the thick wood while watching the quiet road outside. Most mornings pass without interruption. Still, the gate remains watched carefully. Inside the castle buildings, more work continues. In one corridor above the great hall, a servant carries a basket of freshly washed cloth. The hallway remains cool and dim compared to the bright courtyard outside. Small windows allow narrow beams of light to enter, illuminating the dust that floats quietly in the air. The servant moves slowly from one chamber to another, placing folded cloth where it is needed. Rooms must be kept ready for those who live in them. Beds are straightened, tables are wiped. Small tasks like these fill the quiet hours of the morning. Back in the courtyard, the sounds of the castle blend together. The hammer of the blacksmith, the creak of the well rope, the soft voices of servants speaking while they work, the calm movement of horses in the stable. These sounds repeat each day, forming the steady rhythm of life inside the castle walls. Above it, all the towers stand tall and silent, watching over the quiet activity below. And as the sun climbs higher into the morning sky, the castle continues its patient work, carrying the life of its people forward into another ordinary day. The morning continues to grow brighter as the sun climbs higher above the castle walls. The cool air of early morning slowly fades, replaced by a gentle warmth that spreads across the courtyard stones. Shadows that were long at sunrise begin to shorten as the light moves steadily across the open space. The castle settles into the full rhythm of the day. Near the well, servants continue their steady work. Buckets rise and fall through the wooden frame, carrying fresh water from the dark well below. Each bucket is lifted carefully and carried away toward the kitchens, the stables, or the washing basins along the inner walls. Water touches nearly every part of castle life. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith continues shaping iron at the forge. Clang. The sound echoes lightly against the stone towers before fading into the morning air. The metal glows red as it rests on the anvil, slowly changing shape beneath the careful strikes of the hammer. Nearby, the stable remains calm. The horses stand quietly in their stalls while the stable boys finish their work for the morning. Fresh straw covers the floor, and the stable doors remain open to allow the warm sunlight inside. The animals appear content, their calm presence adding to the steady rhythm of the courtyard. Above the courtyard, along the wall walk, the guards continue their slow patrol beneath the bright morning sky. From the high stone path, they watch the quiet land beyond the castle walls, where farmers work in distant fields and narrow roads wind gently through the countryside. Inside the castle, the long day continues to unfold with the same calm patience that has guided it since sunrise. The morning slowly begins to lean toward midday. Sunlight now fills the courtyard completely, touching every corner of the stone ground. The towers no longer cast long shadows like they did at sunrise. Instead, the light spreads evenly across the walls and buildings, warming the surfaces that cooled during the night. Inside the castle, The steady rhythm of the day continues. The courtyard holds the quiet movement of many small tasks happening at once. Servants pass from building to building carrying tools or baskets. The sound of footsteps echoes gently against the stone. Near the well, another bucket of water rises slowly through the wooden frame. The rope creaks softly as it moves across the wheel. The bucket appears from the darkness below with a splash of cool water that glimmers briefly in the sunlight before being carried away once more. This work repeats many times each day. Water flows quietly through the life of the castle. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith continues his careful labor. The forge burns hot now, and the iron resting inside glows brightly. The blacksmith lifts the metal with strong tongs and places it on the anvil. His hammer rises and falls in its familiar rhythm. Clang, pause, clang. Each strike sends small sparks into the air where they fade quickly in the daylight. Nearby, a young apprentice watches closely. He stands beside the workbench holding a wooden handle that will soon be fitted to a tool. From time to time, the blacksmith offers a few quiet words, showing the boy how to hold the metal or how to watch the changing color of the heated iron. Learning often happens like this inside the castle, not through long lessons, but through careful watching and patient practice. Inside the stable, the horses remain calm beneath the warm light entering through the open doors. Some of them chew slowly on grain placed in wooden troughs earlier in the morning. Others rest quietly with their heads lowered, enjoying the calm of the stable. The stable boys move through the stalls checking each animal. One boy brushes a horse's coat again, removing the last dust from its back. Another inspects the hooves of a horse that will be ridden later in the day. Care for the animals continues throughout the day. The stable smells of hay, leather, and warm sunlight. Outside once more, the courtyard grows a little busier as the morning continues. A pair of soldiers crosses the open space carrying practice shields toward the training yard. Their boots strike the stone with steady steps before they disappear through the wooden gate that leads into the fenced practice ground. Soon the sound of wooden swords striking together will return once more. Nearby, two servants carry baskets of vegetables from the small garden. The baskets hold onions, herbs, and small green leaves that will be used in the kitchen later. They walk slowly toward the kitchen door, careful not to spill the harvest gathered from the quiet rows of plants along the inner wall. The garden remains peaceful even while the rest of the courtyard stays active. Leaves move gently in the warm breeze that drifts across the castle walls. Bees continue their slow work among the flowers. Above the courtyard, the guards maintain their watch along the wall walk. From this height, the entire castle appears calm and organized. People move across the courtyard like small figures following familiar paths. Beyond the walls, the countryside stretches outward beneath the bright midday sun. Farmers work in the fields, guiding plows through the soil. Thin roads carry the occasional traveler moving slowly between villages. The guard pauses beside a tower and studies the distant road for a moment before continuing his walk. Inside the great hall, the quiet calm of the morning remains. The meal that filled the room earlier has already passed. Servants have finished cleaning the tables and stacking the benches neatly along the walls. Sunlight enters through the tall windows, filling the large space with gentle brightness. Dust floats slowly in the still air. The hall rests peacefully for now, waiting for the next gathering that will come later in the day. Along the corridors above the hall, a servant carries a basket of folded cloth from one chamber to another. The narrow hallway remains cool despite the warmth outside. The stone walls keep the air steady and calm. As the servant walks past one of the small windows, a beam of sunlight touches the floor. Through the window, the courtyard can be seen below, alive with the quiet movement of daily life. The servant pauses briefly to look down before continuing along the corridor. Back outside, the castle continues its work. The hammer strikes of the blacksmith, the creak of the well rope, the soft voices of people speaking while they pass each other in the courtyard. These sounds blend together into the steady music of the day. Above them, all the towers stand silent, their stone surfaces bright beneath the midday sun. And slowly, patiently, the life inside the medieval castle continues its calm and familiar rhythm. Midday settles gently over the castle. The sun now stands high above the towers, and the courtyard lies bright beneath its steady light. The warmth of the day spreads across the stone walls and along the wooden doors of the buildings that circle the open space. People continue their work without hurry. Near the well, servants draw water again and again, carrying the heavy buckets toward kitchens and washing areas. The rope moves across the wooden wheel with its familiar creaking sound. Each movement feels ordinary, yet the work never truly stops. Water is needed throughout the day. The quiet path from the well to the castle buildings becomes worn by many footsteps over the years. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith pauses for a moment beside the forge. The iron he shaped earlier now rests cooling on the workbench. Heat rises gently from the forge while the blacksmith wipes his hands on a cloth and drinks from a wooden cup. Even strong work requires small moments of rest. Nearby, the apprentice continues watching the glowing coals inside the forge. The boy adds another small piece of coal to keep the heat steady. Learning often begins with these quiet tasks. Soon the hammer will rise again. Not far from the forge, the training yard grows active once more. Two knights stand facing each other inside the wooden fence. Their practice swords are made of thick wood, worn smooth from many sessions of training. They move slowly, stepping forward and back with careful balance. The sound of wood striking wood carries lightly into the courtyard. Soldiers standing nearby observe the movements. Sometimes one offers a short comment about a stance or a step, but most of the time they simply watch. Training is not rushed. The purpose is patience and control. A young boy stands near the fence again, resting his hands along the wooden rail as he watches the practice. His eyes follow each movement closely. Perhaps he imagines himself standing there one day. Across the courtyard, the stable doors remain wide open to the midday air. Sunlight reaches deep into the stable, touching the straw scattered along the floor. The horses stand quietly, their coats shining beneath the bright light. One stable boy leads a horse slowly out into the courtyard. The animal walks calmly beside him, guided by a simple rope. The boy leads the horse toward a water trough where it lowers its head and drinks. Nearby, another boy cleans the stable floor with a wide wooden broom. The straw gathers into small piles that will later be carried away. Work inside the stable continues steadily throughout the day. Across the courtyard, the garden near the wall remains peaceful. The herbs and vegetables grow quietly beneath the sun. Leaves move gently whenever the breeze drifts through the castle. The woman who tends the garden stands slowly and stretches her back after kneeling beside the plants for a long time. She brushes the soil from her hands and walks toward the well to refill her small bucket. The garden requires constant care. Each plant depends on small daily attention. Above the courtyard, the guards continue walking their path along the wall walk. From their high position, the view stretches far beyond the castle walls. The land appears bright and open beneath the midday sun. Fields lie in neat shapes across the countryside. In the distance, a few travelers move along the narrow road that winds toward the castle. Their cart rolls slowly over the path, raising a faint cloud of dust behind it. The guard pauses beside a tower and watches the road carefully for a moment. Most travelers simply pass along the road without approaching the castle gate. Still, the watch remains careful and steady. Inside the great hall, the calm of midday remains. The room is bright with sunlight pouring through the tall windows. The long tables sit empty for now, their wooden surfaces warm beneath the light. A servant walks slowly across the hall carrying a cloth and wiping away small specks of dust. The hall often spends these hours in quiet rest between meals. Outside again, the sounds of the courtyard continue. The hammer of the blacksmith returns to its steady rhythm. The sound travels upward toward the towers before fading into the warm air. Nearby, a pair of servants carry baskets of cloth toward the washing area near the inner wall. Water splashes softly as they begin rinsing the cloth inside large wooden tubs. Work fills nearly every corner of the castle. Yet the feeling remains calm. There is no great hurry. Each task follows the quiet pace of the day. Above it all, the towers stand tall against the clear sky, watching over the steady life unfolding within the castle walls. And slowly, as the sun continues its journey across the sky, the castle moves gently through the peaceful hours of midday. The quiet hours of midday continue inside the castle. The sun stands high above the towers, and the courtyard rests beneath a wide and steady light. Warmth spreads across the stone ground while the breeze moves gently between the buildings. People continue their work without much change in pace. Near the well, another bucket rises slowly from the darkness below. Water glimmers briefly before being carried away toward the kitchens and washing basins. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith's hammer lifts and falls again. Clang. The sound echoes softly against the castle walls before fading into the warm afternoon air. Inside the stable, the horses remain calm. One horse lowers its head into a trough of water, while a stable boy brushes the dust from another animal's coat. Above them, along the wall walk, the guards continue their steady patrol beneath the bright sky. From the high stone path, they watch the distant fields and quiet roads that stretch far beyond the castle walls. Inside the great hall, the room remains peaceful and empty, waiting for the next gathering when evening slowly returns. And so the castle continues its calm rhythm, moving gently through another ordinary day. The day continues its quiet journey across the castle. By now, the sun has begun its slow movement toward the western sky once again. The bright midday light softens slightly as the afternoon begins to return. Shadows that had nearly disappeared during midday slowly begin to form again along the edges of the towers. Inside the courtyard, the steady rhythm of work continues. Servants cross the open space carrying tools and baskets. The stone ground beneath their feet holds the warmth of the day. Their footsteps echo gently against the walls before fading into the open air. Near the well, the rope continues its slow movement over the wooden wheel. The bucket lowers into the darkness and returns filled with cool water. A servant lifts it carefully and carries it toward the kitchen where the evening meal will slowly begin to take shape. Across the courtyard, the blacksmith's workshop remains busy. The forge burns brightly as the blacksmith places another piece of iron onto the anvil. His hammer rises and falls with the same patient rhythm that has guided his work since morning. Each strike shapes the metal a little more. Nearby, the apprentice watches closely, learning through quiet observation just as he has throughout the day. Inside the stable, the horses stand calmly in the warm afternoon light. A stable boy leads one horse slowly across the courtyard toward the training yard. The animal walks quietly beside him, its hooves making soft sounds against the stone. Another boy remains inside the stable, spreading fresh straw across the floor. The care of animals continues steadily as the day moves forward. Across the courtyard, the garden along the inner wall rests beneath the gentle sunlight. The plants stand tall and green after receiving water earlier in the day. Leaves move slightly in the breeze that drifts through the courtyard. The woman who tends the garden checks each row one last time before setting her tools aside. The garden will rest until tomorrow morning. Above the courtyard, the guards continue their watch along the wall walk. From their high path, the countryside spreads wide beneath the afternoon sky. Fields shine softly under the sunlight, and distant roads carry the slow movement of travelers. The guard pauses beside one of the towers and looks toward the horizon. The day is slowly beginning its return toward evening. Inside the great hall, servants begin preparing the room once more. Wooden tables are arranged in their familiar rows. Benches are placed carefully beside them. Clay cups are set along the table edges where people will soon sit again for the evening meal. Sunlight still enters through the tall windows, but the light has begun to soften compared to earlier in the day. The hall slowly prepares itself for the gathering that will arrive later. In the corridors above the hall, a servant carries a basket of clean cloth from one chamber to another. The hallway remains cool and quiet despite the warmth outside. Small windows allow narrow lines of light to fall across the stone floor. The servant pauses briefly beside one of the windows and looks out across the courtyard. Below, the life of the castle continues. The blacksmith works beside the glowing forge. Servants cross the open space. Horses move quietly in the stable yard. These scenes repeat day after day. Back outside, the afternoon breeze moves gently through the courtyard. A few birds circle above the towers before settling along the stone edges of the walls. Near the training yard, the soldiers who practiced earlier in the day have finished their work. The wooden swords rest once again against the fence. The ground inside the yard holds the marks of many footsteps, but for now the space remains quiet. Children wander along the edge of the courtyard once more, watching the life around them with calm curiosity. One child sits near the well drawing shapes in the dust with a small stick. Another watches the blacksmith from a safe distance, fascinated by the glowing metal and rising sparks. Castle life often passes this way. Adults work. Children observe. The walls stand quietly around them all. Above the courtyard, the sky slowly changes color as the afternoon continues. The light grows softer. The shadows grow longer. And the castle, just as it did yesterday and the day before, continues its calm and steady rhythm as the day slowly moves toward evening once again. The afternoon slowly begins to soften once more. The sun lowers gently in the sky, and the warm light that filled the courtyard during midday now stretches across the stone ground in long, quiet shapes. The towers cast growing shadows that reach slowly toward the center of the open space. Inside the castle walls, the work of the day continues at an easy pace. Servants move through the courtyard carrying the final tools and baskets that were used during the afternoon. Some walk toward the kitchen building where preparations for the evening meal have already begun. From inside the kitchen, the warm smell of cooking drifts slowly into the open air. The hearth fire burns steadily again as the cooks stir large pots and prepare simple dishes that will soon be carried into the great hall. Nearby, the blacksmith's work finally begins to slow. The iron tool resting on the anvil now holds its finished shape after many careful strikes. The blacksmith lifts it and studies the surface in the fading light before placing it beside the other tools that were completed during the day. The forge fire still glows warmly, but the hammer rests quietly for the moment. Across the courtyard, the stable grows calm again. The horses that were led out earlier have returned to their stalls. One stable boy closes a wooden gate while another checks the water buckets beside each animal. The horses lower their heads into the straw and begin to settle as the long day draws closer to evening. Nearby, the garden along the inner wall rests peacefully beneath the gentle light of late afternoon. Leaves move slowly in the soft breeze. The rows of herbs and vegetables stand quiet after a day of sunlight and careful attention. The woman who tends the garden walks past the plants one final time before returning toward the courtyard. The garden will wait patiently until morning returns again. Above the courtyard, the guards continue their steady walk along the wall walk. From this height, the countryside now carries the golden colors of the lowering sun. Fields glow softly beneath the light, and the distant roads grow quieter as travelers move toward the villages where they will spend the night. The guard pauses beside one of the towers and looks across the peaceful land. Most days pass quietly like this. The castle stands watch over the surrounding countryside, while life within its walls follows its familiar rhythm. Inside the great hall, servants continue preparing the tables. Clay cups are placed along the wooden boards. Benches are straightened carefully beside each row. A clean cloth rests across the high table where the lord and members of the household will soon sit. Sunlight from the tall windows now falls at a lower angle, casting long shapes across the stone floor. The hall feels calm and ready. Soon the people of the castle will gather here again to share the evening meal. In the corridors above the hall, the quiet steps of servants move from room to room as they finish the final tasks of the day. Blankets are folded. Small tables are wiped clean. Windows are closed against the cool air that will arrive after sunset. These quiet preparations happen without much notice. Yet they shape the calm rhythm of castle life. Outside once more, the courtyard grows gradually quieter. Fewer people cross the open space now. The sounds of the blacksmith have faded. The stable doors close gently one by one. A lantern is lit near the entrance to the stable, its small flame glowing against the darkening wall. Near the well, the final buckets of water for the evening are lifted and carried away. The rope that moved all day now rests still against the wooden frame. Above the courtyard, the sky begins to change color. The bright blue of afternoon softens into pale gold and gentle orange near the horizon. Birds cross the sky in quiet lines before settling along the tops of the castle towers. Children who played earlier in the courtyard begin drifting toward the sleeping chambers inside the castle. Their voices grow quieter as the evening approaches. And slowly, just as it did the night before, the castle prepares to welcome another peaceful evening within its steady stone walls. Evening returns gently to the castle once again. The sun slips lower beyond the distant fields, and the final light of the day rests softly on the tops of the stone towers. Long shadows stretch across the courtyard where the warmth of the afternoon slowly fades into the cool air of evening. Inside the castle walls, the familiar rhythm continues without hurry. Servants move quietly toward the great hall where the evening meal will soon gather the household together again. The smell of warm food drifts from the kitchen, carried softly through the courtyard by the evening breeze. Near the stable, the horses stand calmly in their stalls, while a lantern glows beside the wooden door. The animals breathe slowly, their quiet presence filling the dim space with a steady rhythm. Above the courtyard, the guards walk their familiar path along the wall walk. From the high stone walkway, they watch the peaceful countryside where the last light of day fades across the distant fields. Inside the great hall, candles begin to glow along the walls. Their soft light spreads slowly across the wooden tables and benches where people will soon sit together once more. The room feels calm and welcoming, just as it did the night before. Outside, the sky grows deeper in color as the first stars begin to appear above the castle towers. The courtyard grows quiet. The well stands still. The forge rests. Doors close softly along the inner walls, and the castle settles once more into the gentle rhythm of evening, holding the quiet lives of its people within the strong and patient stone walls that have watched over them for so many years.